Daniel's days always began before the sun rose and ended long after it had set. By morning, he worked at a small repair shop, fixing broken machines with calloused hands. By night, he cleaned offices to keep food on the table. The world only seemed to notice his tired eyes and worn-out clothes, but hidden beneath them was a heart that refused to give up. His daughter, Emily, was the reason he pushed forward. At just 7 years old, she carried a smile so bright it seemed to erase every ache in his body. Every night, no matter how late he came home, he tucked her in and whispered promises of a brighter future, promises he wasn't sure how to keep, but ones he refused to let go of. Bills piled up, rent was always a worry, and his body begged for rest, yet Daniel never let hardship harden him. He still held doors open for strangers, offered his last coin to someone hungrier than himself, and found moments to laugh with Emily even when life gave him little reason to. People often wondered how a man with so little could give so much. But Daniel believed kindness was the only wealth he truly owned, and it was something he could always pass on to his daughter. Exhausted yet unbroken, he walked through each day with quiet strength, unaware that fate was about to reward his selflessness in a way he could never have imagined. Late one rainy evening, Daniel was walking home from his night shift, his jacket thin against the cold. The road was quiet, slick with water, when suddenly the screech of tires tore through the silence. Just ahead, a car lost control, spun wildly, and crashed into a tree with a sickening thud. Smoke began curling from the hood, and the faint flicker of flames threatened to spread. Without a second thought, Daniel dropped his bag and ran. His heart pounded, but fear never slowed his steps. Through the shattered window, he saw a young woman slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious. The smell of gasoline hung in the air, sharp and dangerous. "Stay with me," he shouted, though she couldn't hear him. With raw strength, he forced the door open, cutting his arms on the jagged metal. Ignoring the pain, he pulled her out just as the flames began to rise. He carried her a safe distance away, laying her gently on the wet grass, rain soaking them both. For a moment he knelt beside her, his chest heaving, whispering, "You're safe now. You're going to be okay." He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or if she had anyone waiting for her. None of it mattered. What mattered was that she was alive. As the sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer, Daniel stayed by her side, shielding her from the rain. He had no idea that this single act of selflessness would change the course of his life forever. A few days later, as Daniel was finishing his shift at the repair shop, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. On the other end was a soft but steady voice. "This is Sophia. You saved my life." For a moment, Daniel was silent, unsure how to respond. He had almost forgotten the chaos of that night, brushing it off as something anyone would have done. But Sophia was insistent, she wanted to meet him. When they finally sat across from each other at a small cafe, Daniel felt out of place. His clothes were worn, his hands rough with grease, while she carried an elegance that turned heads the moment she walked in. Yet her eyes weren't filled with pride or distance. They held gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "You risked everything for a stranger." Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. I just did what anyone should." But Sophia saw more. As they talked, she noticed the tired lines on his face, the way his shoulders slumped with the weight of responsibility. When he mentioned his daughter, Emily, his voice softened with love, and Sophia felt her chest tighten. She had wealth, status, and comfort, but she realized she lacked something Daniel carried so strongly: pure, selfless devotion. In that moment, Sophia understood that the man who saved her wasn't just a hero of circumstance. He was a father fighting quietly against life's storms, and she knew she couldn't let his kindness go unanswered. When Sophia asked more about his life, Daniel tried to brush it off, but the truth slipped through in pieces: how he juggled 2 jobs, how every cent went toward rent and food, and how his only dream was to give Emily a future brighter than his own. He spoke humbly, never asking for pity, his voice steady but edged with quiet exhaustion. Sophia listened, her heart aching. Here was a man who had risked his life for her, not knowing her name, not caring about her wealth, and yet he carried burdens heavier than she could imagine. She had grown up in privilege, surrounded by abundance, but never felt the kind of love and sacrifice Daniel showed for his daughter. With tears welling in her eyes, Sophia reached across the table. "Daniel," she said softly, "let me help you." He started to protest, shaking his head, uncomfortable with the idea of charity. But Sophia's tone was firm, filled with sincerity. "This isn't charity. It's gratitude. You gave me a second chance at life. The least I can do is give Emily hers." She explained her plan: to cover Emily's education, to ensure Daniel no longer had to choose between paying bills and buying food, to lift the crushing weight he had carried for so long. Daniel's eyes burned with tears he rarely allowed himself to shed. For the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten, the possibility of hope. And it had come from the very life he saved. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of gold as Daniel stood outside a new school, holding Emily's small hand. She wore a crisp uniform and carried a backpack that seemed almost too big for her, but her face was glowing with excitement. Daniel bent down, brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead, and whispered, "This is your beginning, sweetheart. Make it count." Emily nodded, her eyes wide with wonder as she walked through the gates. For a moment, Daniel just stood there, watching her step into a world of possibilities he once feared she'd never reach. His chest swelled with pride, and for the first time in years, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Across the street, Sophia sat quietly in her car, watching the scene unfold. She didn't approach, didn't need recognition. It was enough to see the joy she had helped spark. Her lips curved into a smile, and for a fleeting second, she felt her own heart heal in ways money had never managed. Daniel looked up at the sky, whispering a silent thank you, to fate, to kindness, to the stranger who had become an angel in disguise. In that moment, the story of a poor single father and a wealthy young woman intertwined forever, bound not by wealth or status, but by humanity. And as Emily disappeared into her classroom, the world seemed brighter, carrying the quiet reminder: one act of compassion can change more lives than we ever imagine.